Where do you draw the line between tough love and verbal abuse? And what is more important, equal treatment for everybody or emotional intelligence? At some point in your lives, all of you have had a coach or instructor, whether it be sports, an instrument, even a regular teacher slash professor who pushed you to your wits' end. No matter what, you can never seem to do anything right in their eyes. Many of their criticisms and lectures would torturously echo in your head at random hours of the day, making you want nothing to do with the very thing you used to be so passionate about. And on the rare occasions when they missed a practice or game, you felt an intense jolt of relief to not be hounded for that one day. A little over a decade ago, during my nonage, I had a coach who put my teammates and I through absolute hell. He had this remarkable ability to size all of us up, point out the biggest flaws in our games without ever raising his voice. Just think of the most nonchalant, unrelenting roasting session possible, and that's what he did 24/7. But as exposed as this coach made me feel, and I know you guys will relate to this next part, whenever I made an achievement, when I scored, made a big play, receiving his praise and seeing his reaction meant a lot more than it did for my other coaches and teammates. Now, after the season was over, I discovered that this coach was regularly showing up to our practices while inebriated. I always smelled something strong on him, but I was too young to tell exactly what it was, but I knew he was trying to mask it with Listerine. Unsuccessfully, of course. I also have no idea why our other coaches allowed this to take place, other than they were probably afraid of the guy too. But the reason for his alcoholism, you ask, it was because he was actually the co-inventor of a product, which out of respect for his privacy, I will not disclose. But this invention has gone on to generate over $1 billion in sales and is still going strong as of today. However, things took a turn for the worst. I don't have the intricate details, but he either lost his ownership stake or mishandled subsequent investments and got booted from the business, losing upwards of $100 million. So imagine bearing the weight of knowing you let generational wealth slip through your fingers as you raise your family and watch your kids have to work. Yet he used what little fight he had left in his spirit to come coach our team. Before I even joined the squad, I was already beginning to lose my passion for the sport due to certain problems in my life that I was running from, and these roadblocks began to negatively affect my performances. And this coach somehow had the discernment, even in his drunken stupors, to notice what was going on when the other coaches did not, and addressed it with me. I denied it all and foolishly did not take action to sort everything out until years later. This coach certainly went about things in an unprofessional manner, but I came to understand that anyone watching that closely was doing it because they cared to the utmost degree. And this, of course, brings us to the man of the hour who has not blinked once in 3 minutes, Eric Bieniemy. When Eric Bieniemy left the Chiefs after their Super Bowl victory, it seemed like a bizarre move, especially to migrate to Washington, but it actually made perfect sense. Andy Reid had gone 20 years as a head coach without a single Super Bowl on his resume, yet had a pair of Lombardis in just 5 seasons with Bieniemy. Yet he couldn't find any head coaching jobs of his own. So what better way to prove his weight in gold than to turn around an offense that's finished in the bottom 10 in points per game over the last half decade? Now, he's known, Eric Bieniemy that is, for his heavily critical coaching style, but who would have thought that his head coach of all people would blab to the media about how uncomfortable he's making new players? Ron Rivera's motivations for doing so are questionable, but let's remember that this is the same guy who's failed to finish over 500 since he's become the Commanders coach and has thrown his quarterback under the bus as well. So we'll just leave it at that. As far as the players, it goes without saying that pro athletes can be very entitled and at times full-on narcissistic. They've been sheltered their whole lives and damn near worshipped, and that egocentricity is only bolstered by the millions they're paid upon entering the league. Hell, regular everyday people are plenty entitled too. To the audience listening, think about your personal life and some of the relationships you've lost over the years simply because you were honest to someone that could not handle the truth. I've lost a couple of friendships myself and been called some very crazy things simply for expecting my fellow adults, even ones much older than I am, to take accountability for their words and actions and to act like, well, adults. In the Commanders' case specifically, it doesn't help matters that they've still got the remnants of the funk of one of the worst pro sports owners of all time on their persons. With all of the scandals the franchise has made headlines for, they're clearly not used to being held to this degree of accountability. Now, the other reason certain players could be complaining could be due to internal conflicts. Several years ago, Eagles lineman Lane Johnson had criticized how uptight he thought the New England Patriots were, and that he'd much prefer winning just one ring and having fun doing it, rather than winning 5 Super Bowls the miserable Patriots way, as he described it. However, we now have the understanding that Lane Johnson has been dealing with persistent anxiety and depression well before he even reached the league, to the extent that he was ready to retire the season before last from the same team he was having so much fun being a member of. Either way, both possibilities for the Commanders players' protestations actually lend credence towards Bieniemy being the most perfect candidate to reboot this team. In my best Chris Collinsworth impression, here's a guy who has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, was arrested several times in the past, and has been about as low in life as one can get, but turned the corner by taking all of that negative energy and harnessing it for something meaningful, reaching the mountaintop twice. There's a reason why former Chiefs player Andrew Wiley specifically cited Bieniemy as the driving factor behind him also migrating to Washington. Superstars like Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes have also voiced additional support for their former coach. Earlier today, while going for a walk, an old song by the rapper J. Cole called Higher popped up in my playlist that feels eerily similar to the situation. It tells the story of a young Jermaine Cole, who'd be Eric Bieniemy in the situation, trying to get a girl's attention, aka the Commanders. This girl is specifically on the prowl for a guy with the Super Bowl ring or someone of that upper echelon tier, and Cole is essentially letting her know to look no further because he's him. He is that baller who can upgrade her life even though this relationship may be short-lived, the same way EB knows this job can merely be a stepping stone for something greater. But this girl is a little too slow to realize she's fumbling the bag in front of her, partly due to bad experiences with an ex, who would be Dan Snyder in this case. A very funny song, but a perfect representation of the dynamic between EB and Washington. Last thoughts on the matter. It wouldn't hurt if the new ownership group steps in with a show of support for Bieniemy. Josh Harris was born and raised in the DC area, and we know Magic Johnson loves being in front of the camera. This team has potential, and the NFL is always a better product when historically great franchises are contemporaneously competitive. But we'll see what happens next.